Hi everyone, my name is Vaibhav Patel. I'm a registered migration agent at Oasis Group. Today we are going to discuss about a parent visa on our Facebook Live session. So in parent visa, there are different categories and different subclasses under different categories like age parent visa and normal parent visa, and then different subclasses under those visa categories. But before we discuss that, we just need to discuss, or we need to understand the basic requirements for the parent visa subclasses, right? So the first thing is obviously the applicants who are applying for a parent visa would have an Australian citizen or permanent resident child who is a settled Australian citizen or permanent resident. Now the definition of settled Australian citizen is generally considered to be a person who is on a permanent or visa or an Australian citizen who is living in Australia for at least 2 years or more. Now, if your child or if the applicant's child is living in Australia and has been living in Australia for 2 years and has a permanent visa or an Australian citizenship, that person can sponsor their parents to apply for a parent visa. Now, the second requirement, or the second most important requirement that we usually need, or we usually need to make sure that we meet that, which is the family balance. Now, under the family balance requirement, the applicant needs to prove that they have a child. Let's say they have certain childs, and out of that, at least 50% of their child are Australian citizen or PR, and they're currently living in Australia, or either they have more child in Australia than any other country. So, for example, if you look at your on the screen right now, the family balance table, so we can explain that in detail now. So, if let's say applicant has only one child, definitely the applicant does not really have to worry about it, and they have an Australian citizen, the child is Australian citizen or PR, there is no problem. Now, if they have two kids, then one must be in Australia and another child can be anywhere, but the one that is in Australia must be Australian citizen or permanent resident and must be sponsoring their parents' right life for this parent visa. Now, if they have three kids, again refer to the table. If they have four, they have five. So let's say, for example, if they have five, so if they have five children and if they have three who are Australian citizen or permanent resident. Now it meets the definition of the family balance because the minimum 50% of their child are Australian citizen or PR and they're currently living in Australia. Or let's say if they have five childs, but then they have only two childs who are living in Australia, but then the rest of the threes are living in three different countries. Then now this meets the second requirements on the table. If you see, there are two small requirements mentioned that you have to meet either of them, which is either 50% of the child must be Australian citizen, or they have more child in Australia than any other country. So in the second example, so if they have five kids, five children, and then two are Australian citizen or PR, and then the three children are living in three different countries. So let's say, for example, Philippines, USA, and UK. So they have three different child living in three different countries, and now two childs living in Australia on a permanent visa. Now, in this case as well, they meet the family balance requirements. Now, once they meet the family, if they don't meet the family balance requirement, obviously they cannot apply. So if your parent, you first need to make sure that your parent meets this family balance test. If they do not meet the requirement of the family balance, there is no way you can apply for the parent visa because the ABP is clearly saying that if we do not consider any compelling and compassionate reason for these requirements to be waived off. Now, if your parents meets the requirement, then we go ahead. Now, I would categorize the parent visas in two major categories, which is let's say a parent visa, and the second one is an age parent visa. And under each parent visa section now, there are two separate descriptions. Please refer to the next video now. Now, under the parent visa, I would categorize parent visa in two major sections. One is an age parent visa, the second one is a normal parent visa. So in the age parent visa or parent visa, there are two separate categories or two subcategories, which would be an contributory parent visa and a non-contributory parent visa. Now, same thing in parent visa section as well, that the contributory and non-contributory. Now, under the contributory aged parent visa, there are two subclasses, which is subclass 864 and the second one is a subclass 884. Now, the difference between these two visas is the subclass 864 is a permanent one, whereas the subclass 884 is a temporary visa, and where you get a 2-year stay, and then the applicant can still apply for a subclass 864 within these 2 years. Now, in the non-contributory aged parent visa, there is only one subclass called subclass 804, which is a permanent resident visa. Now, under the parent visa, just normal parent visa, there is another, again, there are two categories, contributory and non-contributory. Under the contributory parent visa, there are two subclasses again, subclass 143 and subclass 173. Now, in subclass 143, which is a permanent resident visa, so this application can be lodged onshore or offshore, that doesn't really matter because you don't really get a bridging visa. Now, on the contributory parent visa, subclass 173, which is a temporary resident visa, which is granted for 2 years, and then the applicant, if the applicant wishes to apply for a permanent visa, which is subclass 143, they can apply for that as well. Now, under the non-contributory parent visa, the subclass is 103, which is a permanent visa. Now, the question arises that why there are so many subclasses, right? So now under the contributory, the difference between the age parent visa and normal parent visa is the age requirement. So under the age parent visa, there is a minimum requirement of age, which has to be 65 to 67, which is a retirement age in Australia. Whereas in normal parent visa, the parent could be of any age, like it could be, the parent can be even 40 years or 45 years or 50 years old. Whereas under the age parent visa, to be eligible to apply for an age parent visa, the applicant must be of a certain age. So they have to meet the age requirement, whereas in normal parent visa, they don't have to meet the age requirements. Now, most of the aged parent visas are onshore. So as soon as you lodge a visa application, you get a bridging visa A, and your parents can still stay here. Whereas under the parent visa, just the normal parent visas, most of the visa applications are offshore applications. That means your parents cannot lodge an application while they're in Australia, and even if they lodge it, let's say in subclass 143, they don't get a bridging visa to stay here. So they still have to maintain their visa on their own or leave the country and go overseas and wait for the visa outcome there. Now, difference between the contributory and non-contributory parent visas. So either it is in age parent visa or the normal parent visa. The difference is same, that in the contributory parent visa, the applicant pays higher fees to process the visa application faster, which can, let's say, take about approximately 3 years. Whereas in the non-contributory parent visa, the processing time can go up to 30 years, but then the applicant pays just normal visa application fees. Whereas in the contributory parent visa, the applicant pays a very high fees, which can be, let's say, for a temporary contributory parent visa, usually is 29,000 and 100 and something. On the other hand, let's say on the non-contributory parent visa, they don't really pay anything, right? Now let's move forward about each category. So we'll discuss each visa, which is subclass 864, then 884, then 804, then 143, and 173, and 103. So let's discuss about subclass 864 first. Now, eligibility is obviously first and foremost for pretty much all the categories is that the applicant must have a child who is settled in Australia, who is an Australian citizen or permanent resident or an eligible New Zealand citizen. This means that your child must be settled Australian citizen or permanent resident. The definition of settled here is that the applicant child who is sponsoring must be living in Australia for about 2 years at least, which is considered to be a settlement period or usual residence definition, right? So your child must be living in Australia for approximately 2 years to be eligible to sponsor or for sponsor their parent to apply for a parent visa. Now, second requirement is that the applicant who is sponsoring must be of an eligible age, and the applicant who is applying must be of an age where the person can receive a pension in Australia. So, as I said, the age requirement is between 65 to 67, depending on which year your parents were born. So now the person who is sponsoring must again be at least 18 years old or 18 years old or even older than that, that's fine, and must be Australian citizen, will be settled. Apart from that, they must have to meet the family balance requirement, which we have already discussed, depending on how many kids they have and how many kids they have in Australia and how many kids they have overseas. Applicants who must hold a substantive visa to lodge the subclass 864, because this is an onshore application, so application must be lodged onshore. So that's why the applicant must be having some visa that does allow them to stay here as well as. So it has to be a substantive visa, and the applicant must not have any condition which is preventing them from lodging an application. For example, let's say someone's parent is in Australia, who is on a subclass 600 visa, which is a visitor visa. Now, if the applicant is in Australia and is on a subclass 600 visa, and the applicant has a no further stay condition on the visa, that means it is preventing them from lodging any application while they are in Australia. So in this case, they cannot lodge the visa application. Let's say someone has lodged another application like extension of a visitor visa and they got a rejection, and then they want to lodge a parent visa. Again, they cannot, because there is a section 48 bar which is preventing them from lodging an application. So in different cases, different prevention may apply. But generally, if the applicant is on visitor visa and if the applicant does not have a no further stay condition, then the applicant is generally able to apply for a parent visa as long as they meet the other requirements about family balance and having met the age requirement and all those requirements, right? So now, once you lodge this application, the applicant gets a bridging visa A, which allows them to stay here, right? Now the thing is, in this application, the applicant may not get a Medicare card while the application is in process. However, once the visa is granted, yes, the Medicare can be obtained by applying for with the Medicare office. Now, in this application, the applicant will also need to provide an assurance of a support. So, which is, let's say, someone who is in Australia or their child who is sponsoring them can provide an assurance of support. Now, for this visa subclass 864, the assurance of support for a primary applicant is around $10,000, and if they have additional applicant, let's say husband and like both parents are applying, that means it's going to be additional $4,000 for each adult applicant. So that means if, let's say, mother and father both are applying, and the father is a primary applicant and the mother is a secondary applicant, then the bond assurance of support, which is called a bond, which is going to be $14,000 in this case, because $10,000 for a primary applicant and $4,000 for a secondary one. Now, this bond has to be lodged with before the visa is granted, not when you lodge the visa application. So, and this bond is refundable after a certain period. So you get this money back after some time. However, if your parents use any kind of social benefit from Australian government, this money will be deducted from the bond. Now, application fees for this visa application can go from $0 to 2,090 depending on what is your circumstances. Now, in this application, because it's a contributory parent visa, you have to pay a secondary visa application charge, which is called second WAC, which can be 43,600 according to the current requirement. Now, processing time for this visa can be up to 3 years, or this is approximate time, so it can change. However, now the process is going to be like, if someone wants to intending to apply for this visa, so first check whether your parents meets the family balance or not. How many kids your parents have? If they meet the family balance, let's say they have 2 kids and your one child is, you know, you're citizen or PR, and you want to bring your parents. Now your parents have 2 kids, so your brother or sister who is overseas, and you are here, so that means your parents miss the family balance requirement. Now what happens is you check whether they have a visa which allows them to lodge an onshore application or not. So if they have a visitor visa without no further stay condition, yes, they can lodge a visa application onshore for this subclass 864. Also need to check whether your parents meet the age requirement or not. If they meet all these requirements, you lodge the visa application. Now, once you lodge the visa application, you get a bridging visa A for your parents, and just simply wait for the visa to be granted. Now, before the visa is granted, so now you're waiting, let's say, up to 3 years, and then you get the case officer to allocate it to your case. Now, the case officer will probably ask for a medical examination and a police check to be done for your parents, so which is health and character requirements. As soon as your parents meets the requirement and satisfies the case officer that they meet all these requirements, they will be requested to pay the assurance of support and the second visa application charge. Now, once you pay the second visa application charge, generally the visa is granted because your parents have met all the other requirements. Now, after the visa is granted, this visa allows your parents to live here in Australia on a permanent basis. Even they can apply for a citizenship if they become eligible for a citizenship. They can work and live or study here, enroll in Medicare card and get a Medicare card as well. That's not a problem. The only thing is they won't be able to claim certain benefits, social benefits, for first I think 2 to 10 years, depending on which visa you are applying. Now let's discuss about the next category, which is contributory parent visa, age parent visa, and which is a temporary subclass 884. So in subclass 884, it's quite similar to subclass 864. The only difference is because this is a temporary visa, the applicant does not really pay high fees. It's comparatively lower than the 864. Now let's go about the requirements of this visa in detail. So the requirement is that the applicant must have a child who is an Australian citizen or permanent resident. Again, the same requirements. Be old enough to receive an Australian age pension, so which is again the age could be between 65 to 67 depending on which year your parents were born. Then the applicant must meet the family balance as provided in the slideshow before. Um, Now, the applicant must be sponsored by their family member, or let's say generally it's usually this will be the child of the parents who is an Australian citizen or permanent resident who is above 18, and the applicant, because of applicant is applying onshore, the applicant must have a valid visa. Again, let's say it could be a visitor visa without the no further stay condition, or they must not be prevented from lodging any other application onshore. This is what we're trying to say here. Now, this applicant has to be lodged onshore. So, and as soon as the application is lodged, the applicant is granted a bridging visa. Now, if they have a substantive visa, generally the bridging visa A is granted. Now, if your parents wants to travel overseas during this time, they can always convert the bridging visa A to B and then travel and then come back for if they want to travel overseas for a certain period. Now, in this visa as well, again, they may not be able to get enrolled in the Medicare card or Medicare in Australia while their application is in the process. However, they will be able to probably apply for the subclass 864 later on and then get the Medicare card once the visa is granted. Now, in this visa, there is no assurance of support because this is not a permanent visa. Now, the visa application fees can be between 0 to 3,770. Generally, is 3,770. The second visa application charge, now you pay a lower fees because this is only for 2 years, so which is 29,130. So 29,130. That's the second visa application charge. Now, the current processing time for this visa is up to about 3 years, and the process is quite similar to the 864, which is like you check whether your parents are eligible to apply for this age parent subclass 884 or not. If yes, then you apply for the visa. Your parents gets a bridging visa A, then you wait for the visa outcome. Then whenever your parents are required to complete the medical examination and police check, so when the case officer is allocated, they'll ask your parents to complete the health and character requirements. So once the case officer is satisfied that your parent meets the health and character requirements, then they will be asking you to pay the second visa application charge, which will be 29,130. Now, once this visa is granted, it will be a 2 years visa. Now, this visa will allow your parents to work and live in Australia, and also they will be able to apply for a subclass 864, but they will have to pay additional $19,420 if they want to apply for a 864 visa apart from the normal visa application charge. But however, they can apply for this one. So this actually segregates or divides the bigger payment, which is in 864, which is in subclass 864, which is like 43,600. Now you have divided that into two parts because you got 884 first, where you pay 29,130. Now after, let's say you get 2 years visa, now in these 2 years, if you are able to arrange some 19,420, then if you wish to apply for this visa subclass 864, which is a permanent residency, so you can apply for that and then pay this fees and get the visa. And now please refer to 864 explanation if you have any questions about meeting the criteria for subclass 864. However, if your parents have already got 884, that means they would meet the requirement. The only thing they have to do is complete the medical and complete the medical examination and meet the health and character requirements, and then pay the additional fees that they need to pay. Now, the next requirement or the next visa that we were going to discuss about is going to be an age parent visa subclass 804. Now, this visa is a non-contributory parent visa, so that means you don't really pay a high fees. However, the processing time is going to be up to 30 years. So if we discuss about, let's say the requirement is quite similar to the previous two, which is 864 and 884. Now, In this, the applicant must be of certain age, which is the old enough to be eligible to apply for an Australian age pension. So, which is to around 65 to 67 again, depending on their year of birth. And so, the parent must meet the age requirement first thing. They must have an Australian citizen or permanent resident child who wish to sponsor, and then the parents must meet the family balance requirement. Again, the balance of family test table is given in the previous chat that we have done. So if you want to refer to that again, you must be sponsored by your parents or by your child basically. So your child who is an 18 years old and settled Australian citizen or permanent resident can sponsor for a parent visa for subclass 804. Now, this visa is also onshore, so the applicant must be on a substantive visa in order to lodge this parent visa, and the visa must not prevent them from lodging any other application. Like, let's say, if the parent is on a visitor visa subclass 600, and if they don't have a no further stay condition, they can apply for this visa while they're in Australia. If they have the no further stay condition, unfortunately, they will not be able to apply for this visa because they have a condition which is preventing them from lodging this visa application. It's not like they're not eligible. Even if they're eligible, if they have a no further stay condition, they cannot apply for this one. Now, the bridging visa A is granted upon the lodgement. So, if you lodge the visa application, as soon as you lodge it, you get a bridging visa A for your parents. So, or if the parent is applying, they get a bridging visa A. They may not be able to get enrolled in a Medicare card again because this Medicare has excluded some visa applicants for permanent visa from being able to apply for a Medicare card while their application is in process, particularly the parent visa sections. Now, in this as well, again, assurance of support has to be paid, but the assurance of support amount is quite lower than the contributory parent visa, which is 5,000 for a primary applicant and 2,000 per adult applicant included in the application. Apart from this, the visa application fees is 3,945. That is for just one applicant. If you add up more and more applicants, the application fees will be higher. Now, the second visa application charge is quite lower than the contributory parent visa, where in contributory parent visa, let's say 864, the applicant pays 43,600, where here they only pay $2,065, right? So that's the huge difference. However, the difference is also in the processing time. So the current processing time for this visa application can go up to 30 years. So that's the major difference. That's why a lot of people choose to go for a contributory parent visa so that their parents can get the visa faster. Now, once this visa is granted, the applicant can live here in permanently, indefinitely, with no conditions at all. So they can live here as long they want. They want to, if they want to work, they can work. They can study. They can live. Basically, that allows them to live, work, and study in Australia. Enroll in a Medicare card after the visa is granted, no problems. And if they want to apply for a citizenship, they can also apply for a citizenship. Now let's move to the normal parent visa applications. So this was all about the aged parent visas. So far we have discussed the subclass 864, subclass 884, and subclass 804, which are the aged parent visas. Now we are going to discuss about the normal parent visa, where there is no requirement of age. So let's say if someone's parents does not meet any of the age parent requirements, age parent visas requirements, then they might be able to apply for these normal parent visa applications. Now, under the parent visa application, as I said, there are two categories, contributory and non-contributory. So we will discuss about the contributory parent visa first, which is subclass 143. Now, in subclass 143, again, this requirement is quite similar. The first requirement is quite similar, which is the applicant must be sponsored by an Australian citizen or permanent resident who is their child, most likely. Now, there is no age requirement, so they don't really have to worry about the age. They must meet the family balance requirements still in this visa as well. So again, the family balance is the balance of family test. Please refer to the section there. So it's going to be the table that is on your screen right now. So if you have, let's say, one child, then obviously the applicant is eligible to apply for parent visa if their child is Australian citizen or PR. If they have two, one must be Australian citizen or PR. If they have three kids, then one must be Australian citizen or PR. Sorry, two must be Australian citizen or PR to be eligible to apply for parent visa. And refer to the table as per the personal circumstances of the applicants. But basically, what we need to prove here to meet the family balance requirement is that the applicant has either 50% of their child in Australia, or they have more child in Australia than any other country. So basically, as long as they meet the family balance requirement, yes, they are eligible to apply for a parent visa. And now here again, the application can be lodged onshore or offshore. That doesn't really matter. However, the applicant does not get a bridging visa in any case. So even if the application is lodged onshore, they don't really get a bridging visa in this application. Now, the applicant may not be able to get Medicare anyways because they are not onshore or generally, or even if they're onshore, their application is not considered onshore, so they don't really get qualify for Medicare. And anyways, Medicare has pretty much excluded the parent visa applicants from getting a Medicare while their application is in process. Generally, most of the other visa application for permanent visa does qualify the applicant to be enrolled in a Medicare even though their permanent visa is not finalized yet and even though that application is in the process. However, the generally parent visa, most of the parent visa does not really get that. Now, now the next question is the assurance of support. So the applicant must lodge the bond, or the sponsor or the assurance person providing the assurance of support must be above 18 and lodge a bond, which is $10,000 per primary applicant and $4,000 for each adult applicant included then after. Now, let's say generally there are two applicants, so it's going to be $14,000 for both parents. Now, visa application fees. First visa application fees is around 3,770. And now, if you have more applicants, like let's say two applicants are applying, then there is an additional fees for the secondary applicant. Now, second visa application charge is $43,600, which is same as 864, obviously because they are the same contributory parent visas. So now the current processing time for subclass 143 is approximately 3 years. Now it can go up and down, so it is kept in queue, so the application processing can be a little bit more or less. However, it's going to be much faster than the normal parent visa, where the processing can go up to 30 years. Now, after the grant, the applicants can stay here permanently, live, work, and study if they want. They can also enroll in Medicare after they get this visa. The applicants can apply for a citizenship as well if they are eligible to apply for a citizenship later on. Now, the process is going to be quite similar to subclass 864 and subclass 884 or 804, which is like you check whether your parents are eligible to apply for a parent visa in subclass 143, which is just meeting the requirement for the family balance and having a child who is an Australian citizen or permanent resident. Now, if they meet the requirement, lodge the visa application. Now, visa applicant can be in Australia or outside Australia when lodging it. They don't get a bridging visa, so they have to wait or overseas, or if they want to come here on a visitor visa, they can simply come here on a visitor visa, and that's not an issue. Now, the next requirement is once you lodge the visa application and you're waiting, now whenever the case officer is allocated, the case officer will first ask the applicant to complete the health and character requirement, which is completing the medical examination and providing the police checks. Once this case officer is satisfied that the applicant meets the health and character requirements, then the applicant can apply. Applicant will be requested to pay the second visa application charge, which is $43,600, as well as lodge the bond. So once you lodge the bond and pay the second visa application charge, the applicant is usually granted the visa application, as the case officers have already made sure that the applicant meets the requirement before requesting for the bond. So a lot of people get confused that they have to lodge or pay $43,600 right now when they lodge it. No, you have to lodge the visa application by just paying normal visa application fees and then wait. Whenever your parents completes the health and character requirements after the case officer is requested, once the case officer is satisfied that your parent meets all the requirements for the visa to be granted, then only the case officer will come down and ask the applicants to pay the bond as well as the so lodge the bond and as well as pay the second visa application charge, which is $43,600 in this visa subclass 143. Now let's move to the next subclass, which is subclass 173, which is a temporary version of the subclass 143, which is again dividing your cost into two, but then eventually you end up paying more because you're dividing the cost into two. So the application for subclass 173 is once you get a 173 visa, you can apply for a 143 and pay the remaining fees, which is 19,420. Now let's discuss about 173 visa in detail. So again, the requirement is quite similar to other visas in this category, which is applicant must have a sponsor, a child who wants to sponsor them for a parent visa. Applicant must meet the family balance requirements, which is the balance of family test, which is on your screen now. So if you meet the family balance requirement, if your parent meets the family balance requirement, they can apply for this visa. There's no age limit, so the applicant can be, your parents can be either 40, 45, 50, whatever. And there's no specific age requirements basically for this visa. Uh, Now the applicant who is sponsoring, so the sponsor who is sponsoring the applicant must be at least 18 years old, which is usually the child of the parents, right? And who is a settled Australian citizen or permanent resident. Again, we have already discussed about what is settled Australian citizen. So settled Australian citizen is someone who has been living in Australia for 2 years or so. Uh, Now this application has to be lodged offshore, so there is no bridging visa granted because it's an offshore application, and the applicant is also not eligible to get a Medicare card while their application is in process because they are not in Australia anyways. Now, uh, the assurance of support is not required for because this is a temporary visa. Now, the visa application fees is, let's say, approximately 2,540, which is the current fees for a single applicant. If they have secondary applicant included in the application, the application fees can go up a little bit because you are also paying for an additional applicant. Now, second visa application charge, which is 29,130. Which is per parent. So a lot of people get confused here as well, that is this fees either 43,600 or 29,130, which is for both parents or one parent. It's for one parent, so per adult applicant. Now, current visa application processing time for subclass 173 can go up to 3 years or even more than that or even less than that. So it's skewed and capped. So we assume that it's going to be around somewhere around 3 years or so. Now, once this visa is granted, this visa allows the applicant to live in Australia, work and study for 2 years because this visa is valid for only 2 years. But the applicant can still apply for subclass 143 if they are happy to pay additional fees, which is 19,420, and they can get a permanent visa, which is subclass 143. Now let's move forward to the next category, which is a non-contributory parent visa, where the applicant has to meet the similar requirements of like that we have discussed so far. The only difference is that the applicant does not pay higher fees, but the processing time goes up in this application process. So again, the applicant must be sponsored by an Australian citizen or permanent resident child who uh, who is above 18 roughly, at least. So there is no age requirement for this visa, so the applicant does not have to meet any sort of age requirements. The only critical part here is meeting the family balance requirement, which is again the family balance test table is on your screen now. So you can have a look if your parents have, let's say, one child and you are the only child and you are Australian citizen or PR. Obviously, you meet the requirement, and your parents also meet the requirement. If they have two childs, one must be Australian citizen or PR, and then so on. If you refer to the table on your screen now. Now, the applicant must be offshore because this is an offshore application. There is no bridging visa granted as this is an offshore application again. There is no Medicare granted as well. Now, assurance of support for this application is 5,000 for primary applicant and 2,000 for each adult applicant included in the application. Now, visa application fees is 3,945 for a primary applicant, and then if you want to add a secondary applicant, which is, let's say, there are two parents applying, then the fees will be a little bit higher. But it's not, that does not really make a big difference. It's like a couple of $1,000. And the second visa application charge for this application is 2,065, unlike, let's say, subclass 143 or 173, that you don't pay higher fees. So you only pay 2,065 for a second VAC, which is after the applicant has met all the requirements for the visa to be granted. Now, current processing time for this visa application can go up to 30 years. So the processing time is quite high. However, once the visa is granted, the applicant is allowed to live in Australia on a permanent basis, work, live, and study if they want to. Enroll in a Medicare, yes, they can, and they can get a Medicare card, but no social benefits for first few years and apply for a citizenship if they are eligible to apply for a citizenship after certain meeting the requirement of a citizenship application. So this is subclass 103. Now this is all about all the parent visas that we have discussed. So now there are a lot of FAQs that we get from clients. So which is like, let's say, do I have to pay all the fees right now? So yes, so the process is going to be pretty much for most of the visa applications, the process is going to be like this. So first, make sure that your parent meets the requirement for any of the parent visas class, depending on which one you are intending to apply. So if your parent meets the requirement, you lodge the application and then wait for the case officer to be allocated. Now, when you lodge the visa application, you pay the first visa application charge, which can be between $2,000 to $5,000 depending on what visa surplus you are applying and depending on how many applicants are included in this application. Now, once you lodge the application, you're waiting. If they're onshore, they get a bridging visa A. If they're offshore, they don't get any bridging visa, so they have to wait offshore. However, they can apply for a visitor visa and come here on a visitor visa. And generally, the visitor visas are granted for a long-term basis for an applicants who have lodged an offshore parent visa application because they're likely to wait for a longer time. So the IBP is a bit leaning towards granting a longer visas for the parents who have applied for the Australian parent visa. That's a subclass 103, for example. Now, once your case office is allocated, let's say maybe if it is a contributory parent visa, it can take 3 years. If it is non-contributory, then it can take up to 30 years. Whenever the case office is allocated, basically, what you're going to do is you will be asked to provide them health and character requirements also. That means asked to complete the medical examination and provide the police checks from each country your parents have lived in, and then complete the requirements and then pay the once the case officer is satisfied that the applicant meets health and character requirements and has met all the requirements for the visa to be granted, they will request the applicant to complete the assurance of support requirement if it is a permanent visa subclass, any of the subclass which is 864, 804, 143 or 103. So in these cases they will be asked to pay the second, obviously they will be asked to pay the assurance of support, lodge the bond, and as well as pay the second application charge, which can be varied depending on which subclass. Let's say if it is a permanent visa subclasses, which is 864 and 143, the applicant will be paying 43,600. If it is 173 or 884 subclass, then the applicant will be paying $29,130. So now once you pay the fees, usually the visa is granted, and then your parents can stay here and come here and stay here. Now this is all about the parent visas. A lot of people have other questions like, let's say, do I have to pay the fees now or do I have to pay the fees later? What stage do I have to pay the fees? So as we mentioned in the process, so the application fees is paid when you launch the visa application, but the bigger amount, which is the contribution, which is 43,600 or 29,130, which will be paid when the visa is being granted, which is, let's say, approximately 3 years down the time. So you don't really have to worry about it. And generally, if you launch the applications, you have to also make sure that you provide all the required documents to support your application. Now we will discuss about general documents that you need to submit with this application. So generally the applicant will need to provide an evidence of the family balance. So obviously the applicant will have to provide the passport and provide an evidence that they meet the family balance requirement, which is by providing an evidence that how many kids they have and how many of them are an Australian citizen or PR. Now, different people from different countries can provide different documents, like for example, a family book or family registration certificate where it shows that how many kids they have and any kids they have who are in Australia and who are Australian permanent resident or citizen and they're living here in Australia for 2 years, then provide an evidence that they have a child. Let's say they meet the family balance requirements. So let's say if they have 2 child, one provide an evidence that they have 1 child who is an Australian citizen or PR and who is sponsoring them to apply for this visa. Apart from that, we need the documents from applicants and you have to fill up the application forms. This application is not available online, so you have to fill the application forms which are available on the IBP's website. Now, I hope that all these information will help you to understand the parent visa subclasses. If you have any questions about the discussion today, you can always drop the question under the comment section on our Facebook live session. So, and we will try and endeavor to answer your questions as soon as possible from our end. So you're free to post all your questions there, and we will try and answer them. We really thank you for watching us today, and we hope that this information would have helped you in understanding the structure of the parent visa, and may have cleared a lot of people's doubts about their questions, and then resolve their queries about the parent visas. Please like our page if you like our information, if you like the job we do for a community, so which is international people, obviously. Now, if you like the information, as we said, as we request you to like our page and share this video as well, so it can reach more and more people. And we thank you for watching us today. Thank you.